We've talked a lot about applying effects directly to the clips in your sequence, and we've also talked about methods for sharing effects across clips, such as how to copy and paste effects from one clip to another, and how to copy and paste effect attributes, and how to create presets. However, sometimes it can be really advantageous to apply effects to a layer above your clips called an adjustment layer. Or you might like to combine all of your clips into one nest and apply an effect to that. Each has their own advantages, which we'll discuss in this movie. So I have our Greyhound montage twice here, and we're going to practice two different approaches. And we want to basically apply a look to the entire montage, and it's one that we set up in a previous movie. It's this golden tint with the blurred vignette. And I want to apply it to all of these clips, but I don't want to do it individually. And that's because I might want to change the look of this effect, and I want an easy way to do that and have it be applied across the board. So I'm going to use an adjustment layer for this first example. And if you've worked with adjustment layers in Photoshop or After Effects, it's basically the same thing. We're able to apply a layer above all other elements so that everything underneath is affected. So I'm going to come to my New Item button over here and choose Adjustment Layer. And it sets up my video properties perfectly, so I'll say OK. And here it is, and I'll go ahead and drag it onto V2 above my montage and stretch it all the way out. All right, and by default, it does nothing. All right, so all of my clips look just as they did before. But we'll add some effects to it, and let's grab them from this clip right here. So I'll select it, and then I'll grab my black and white, and then Command or Control click on Tint and Gaussian Blur, and Command or Control C. And let's go ahead and just paste it right here to the adjustment layer, Command or Control V. Now as I skim through the clips within the montage, you can see that everything's affected by this one filter. So that's a huge time saver already. But here's where the real benefit comes in. Let's say that you show the look that you've created to your producer, and instead of having just applied it to a handful of clips, as we've done here, you've applied it to dozens or hundreds of clips within an entire show. And the producer says, you know, let's actually change the look completely. I don't want gold, I want blue. So with an adjustment layer, that's absolutely no problem. You don't have to remove any effects at all from the clips. You don't have to recreate anything. Instead, you just select the adjustment layer and make the change. So I'll come to Tint, and we'll map black to our dark blue, and we'll map white to our light blue. And there we've made the adjustments to a single entity, and the changes were made across the board. Now, if we need to further tweak individual clips within this montage, it becomes a little more complicated. Before, we just had to select each of the shots, and then we could go in and adjust the individual tint per shot. Now that the effects are applied to an adjustment layer, it's a little different. Now I could go on to each individual clip and apply different effects and affect those separately from the adjustment layer, but if I wanted to, say, pull back this tint, I'm going to have to make some cuts. And you do that with the razor tool, keyboard shortcut C. So I'll press C, and I want to sort of shift drag to that edit right there. So shift drag, and it snaps to the edit, and then I'll cut and go back to my selection tool V, and I can come back in and pull back my tint or bump it up, whatever I need to do. So here and there, that's fine, but this can become a little cumbersome if you have a lot of clips that need tweaking beyond the blanket changes of the adjustment layer. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now I want to show you one more thing. Adjustment layers can be used to change the spatial orientation of an entire sequence or section of a sequence. For example, let's say that we wanted to create an effect that sort of shrinks and pivots this frame to get it ready for a title sequence. All right, that's no problem with an adjustment layer. Now, I could add this to the same adjustment layer, but I'm actually going to do it to an adjustment layer above it so that you can see that adjustment layers can work in tandem. So I'll bring this up onto V3, and notice it's the same exact adjustment layer that I used before. You can use this again and again. And I'll select it, and I'm going to come to my effects, and I want to look for my 3D, basic 3D, and we'll drag that on, and I'll come in and swivel it a little bit and adjust my distance, and I can make all sorts of changes, but as you can see, now this adjustment layer is doing something completely different. So we have two adjustment layers working together. And as far as visibility, all the same rules apply. For example, I can turn off V2 and I get rid of my tint and my blur, or I can turn off V3 and I no longer have that difference in spatial orientation. Okay, so pretty handy. So that's adjustment layers. Now I want to talk about nests. I'm going to come down to this montage now. Now, a nest is a container of clips, and we're able to add effects to the outside of the container so that everything inside is affected. So I'm just going to select these clips and then right-click and choose Nest. And I can name this Greyhound Montage Nest 1 and OK. And you can see here in the timeline that I now have one nest, one container. And if I come back to my main project pane, you can see that the nest was created here. And I'll go ahead and move that into my 10.6 bin. And let's take a look at what this nest is. If I double click, I can see inside, and here's all my edits, okay? And any edits that I make in here are reflected at the parent level. So I'm sure you can begin to see that nests have all sorts of awesome uses when combining different scenes or subscenes or things like that. But we're talking about effects here, so I'm going to take the exact same set of effects from my adjustment layer. This time I'll do a copy and paste effect attributes. So I'll select this and Command or Control C, and then come over here. And the keyboard shortcut for paste attributes is Command Option V or Control Alt V on a PC. And here I can climb in and say exactly what I want to copy over. I'll go ahead and bring everything over, so I'll select them all and say OK. And now I've applied the effect to the nest and everything inside is affected as well. My basic 3D will work too. So anything I can do to an adjustment layer, I can basically do to a nest. I can also keyframe on either the nest or the adjustment layer. So if I select the nest and then come over here and do some very basic keyframing, and I think we'll do it on the tint. So I'll twirl down tint, and I'm going to click the stopwatch on amount to tint, and we'll just add another keyframe here and go back to previous keyframe. And on this one, we'll bring it all the way up to 100, and on the next one, we'll go down all the way to 0. Okay? So we have lots of clips inside of here, but as I play this, you'll see that the tint gradually disappears. Okay, and the tint is gone by now. The reason it's still black and white is because we have our black and white filter. Okay? All right, so pretty powerful. And as you can see, both adjustment layers and nests not only can save you time in the creation of your effects, but modifying the effects is really easy and effective.